Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special workshop for social studies being put on by the Institute of Caribbean Studies, in which I am one of the adjunct lecturers. My name is Hugh Dowse, and I'm very happy to be sharing this time with you along with our expert staff who will be presenting today. I want to welcome you in a particular way because many of you are going to continue your academic life beyond high school in this university, the University of the West Indies, which is the university of choice. And you may know by now that we are in the top 4% of universities in the entire world. And this comes about because of the kind of work that we do in the Institute of Caribbean Studies, where we research in depth and are heavily referenced globally for the work that we do on issues like national identities, politics, governance, and all the other things that you would have seen indicated in the advertisement of our programs that preceded this program. The beauty of the virtual in spite of this pandemic, which has caused us to have to use this platform, the beauty of it, if we could call it that, is that we're able to meet and share from all over the region, this wonderful Caribbean, which we interrogate through the examinations that we do. So we really want to welcome you all from all over the Caribbean to this wonderful session today. On behalf of our director, Dr. Sonia Stanley Nair, who may join us later in the session, but because of university meetings, is not able to be with us right now. I just want to, in a very special way, on her behalf, welcome you all, your teachers and yourselves, to this interrogation of who we are and how we do what we do in social studies. Remember, passing the exam is a very important thing, and we're pushing to make sure that we get the ones. But we also are learning through these studies more about ourselves, even as our Caribbean continues to be in identity formation. And the Institute of Caribbean Studies, as you heard before, is very interested in issues of identity, in issues of how to understand ourselves, how to research our own selves, including the clues from our past that give us a signpost for the future, not just using history, but using all the aspects of culture, how we live, and the relations of power that are impacting the ways in which we live. So we really want to encourage you to listen very carefully to our expert presenter who will be making the workshop happen today. And we'll have Isabel again later on facilitating the questions and answers that you will have. So please jot down your questions as you engage the material and as the material engages you. And now I'm going to welcome our special presenter today. Our special presenter is a mother of 3 beautiful children. She teaches at the Convent of Mercy Academy, which in Jamaica we know also as Alpha Academy. And she has taught there for 11 years. She has a diploma in geography and social studies and holds a degree in geography education. She is a committed servant of the Lord, and she is president of the youth department at her church, the Windsor Lodge Apostolic Church. Ladies and gentlemen, students all, because we're all students of life, help me to welcome our presenter today, Mrs. Aldine Henry McNuff.
Thank you so much for having me this afternoon. So many things to do, but I purpose it that I would share with you how to plug the ones. So welcome again. Thanks for having me. And as we go right into the how we plug the ones, we're all students and we all learn different points, different stages in our lives. So quickly, for all our students, could you grab a pen or a pencil, a notebook, because pertinent information is yet to be shared with you today. How to create an excellent SBA for social studies. Now, there are some very important points that you must bear in mind. And I think these points are somewhat ignored or are not paid attention at all. Now, CXC and, with this pandemic that we're experiencing, we have to submit all the SBAs. Gone are the days when we send samples and sometimes there are little errors that we have overlooked. Now all the SBAs will be sent in. And so we cannot afford these errors anymore. In order to plug the ones, then we have to pay keen attention to these requirements that CSEC has established. First and foremost, the SBA components and mark scheme. Here we have all the marks allotted beside each theme or each topic that should be completed or explored in its entirety. There are times when persons, they just do mediocrity and think that that's okay. But we don't do mediocrity. We do excellent work. So statement of the problem. How do we go about establishing our statement of the problem? First and foremost, we must establish a topic that is well within the social studies curriculum. And I am sure your teachers have been guiding you in how to select these topics. Now, any area in social studies curriculum, you can select a topic. Most persons, though, tend to stay within the social issues, as those are very troubling concerns that they hope to get a better understanding of. With the statement of the problem here, it's 2 marks. Reasons for selecting the area of research, 2 marks. Method of investigation, 2 marks. Data collection instrument, 4 marks. And later on, you'll see why. 4 marks for data collection instrument. Procedure of data collection, we have 2 marks. Presentation of data, 6 marks. Analysis and interpretation of data, 8 marks. Statement of findings, 3 marks. Recommendations and implementation strategy, 3 marks. Writing skills and overall presentation, 4 marks each, a total of 40 marks, which is 20% of your final exam grade. Now, how to achieve all of this? Let's go on. Requirements from CXC. These are little nitty-gritties that persons tend to overlook. Times New Roman, size 12. And you wonder, does that really matter? Why do we have to do that? Can't we do anything we want to do? No. There's a requirement and you have to follow through. Double space, it makes your work neater. If you have Times New Roman size 12 for statement of a problem, 14 for analysis and so on, it makes your work untidy. And if we should go back a bit to overall presentation writing skills, then those are factors that matter significantly. Another requirement that is paramount is the APA format of referencing. And many times we don't see the need, but plagiarism is something that is illegal. And if any at all that we want to, get the one, then we have to use the sources, as these sources that we use or other information that we collect to enhance our presentation or to strengthen or to back up what we're saying is not our work. So we have to state the source that we have collected this particular information from. Now, sometimes you wonder, oh, I did an excellent SBA, but how come I did not get the 1 or the 2? CXC is telling us to limit our words. Words in length should be 1,000 to 1,000 and 1,200. There are some areas that are not included, such as a cover page, acknowledgements, table of contents, bibliography, and appendices. So everything outside of that, you must ensure that your words in length follow through. If your word limit exceeds 1,000 to 1,200, a 10% of your score will be deducted. So yes, sometimes you say, oh, I did a wonderful job, but how come? This is the reason why. So I want you to pay keen attention. 1,000 to 1,200 word limit. Anything that exceeds that, you will lose marks. You can't afford that. So we're going to learn today how we can keep within that range. So let's look at the actual research. Statement of the problem. As I said initially, there has to be a topic, there has to be an issue that you want to research. So you must choose a specific topic. Why is it that we're saying choose a specific topic? It's easier to manage. It's easier to collect data over a more specific area, such as your community. Let's say, for example, a community of Raytown in Kingston. I'm not so familiar with like the Trinidad community, so I will just stick to Jamaica if that's okay. All right, so you must choose a specific topic, all right, and a specific community so that you can collect data over this area. And I think it would be feasible to do so. When you have selected your topic, your specific topic, such as drug abuse, teenage pregnancy, improper disposal of garbage, human trafficking, domestic violence, if it is that you want to look at a topic in your school.
Hi, good day, everyone. I'm looking at the example that you have here as the statement of the problem. Isn't this a double barrel question? Because isn't this two research questions you're asking here?
All right, why I have this, there are two variables that I have here. What are the factors responsible within the community of Raytown? And we try to find out the effect, because when we say what are the factors, we're only looking at one variable there, which is just the cause. But with a cause, with an action, there is a reaction. And so for us to garner sufficient information to complete this research, then we have to look at the effect. With a cause, there is always an effect. So having what are the factors responsible is a cause. And then looking at the effect of this issue, this cause, would generate more information so that we can come up with solutions to the problem.
But can the question be rephrased so it would
Yes.
sound like two separate research?
It could be, what are the factors responsible for poverty within community of Raytown, the effect, or who suffers most? So we could have it like that. Now, as was just said, the variables here would be, what are the factors responsible? This would be a cause, and the effect of the problem would be another variable. And so you would generate three broad questions, which would guide you into constructing your instrument, which we will look at later on. So 2 marks for the statement of the problem. Once the statement is feasible, there are two variables, then you will get your full marks for that task. Now, the second task, reason for selecting the area of research. And this is something that you need to pay keen attention to, your headings. Ensure that you don't change from what CSEC has sent. Your headings must reflect your research tasks. So for reasons, reason for selecting the area of research, it's just one paragraph. It's 2 marks, so you can have 1 paragraph. You must identify, though, the main reason why you are doing this research. So we're looking at poverty, for example. Why is it that you're doing poverty? Why the sudden interest? Why do you want to, is there something that you want to discover? Is there something that you want to find out why you're doing this research? So you must have an interest to conducting this research. So I am going to share with you.
What is a variable? So,
all right, variables, we're looking at cause, effect, solution. So you must have a cause. Remember, we're looking at situations, we're looking at problems. There has to be an action. There has to be a reason why that problem has surfaced. And so we have to come up with these. So cause, effect, and if you choose an action or a solution to the problem. So these are what we refer to as variables. So you must have these, at least 2. CSEC recommends at least 2. So you know how to move forward in conducting your research. How some persons construct some of the questions, and you're seeing only 1 variable in it, but at the end of the day, you can get 2 variables or 3 out of that question. Say, for example, how does the absence of the father affect the academic performance of children in the Alpha Academy institution? So you could look at that. How does the absence of the father affect? Though you're seeing just the effect or the effect there, when you're constructing your research questions, you can actually state, why did the father leave? Or what influenced the father to leave? Another could be, what are the reasons for the father? What is the main reason for the father to leave? And then you could also look at an effect. How does this affect their academic performance? So though you see 1 variable there, you can actually, how it is constructed, you can actually pull 2 or 3 out of it, if that answers your question. All right, so reason for selecting the area of research. All right, so this is saying the researcher chose the topic teenagers' lack of interest in attending church. As over the past 12 years residing in Franklintown, she has observed that the number of teenagers attending church is declining rapidly. On most Saturdays and Sundays, the researcher sees many of her teen friends and other teenagers at home during the periods of church service. Many of them have voiced that they are uninterested in attending church and wish not to go back. Therefore, it is the researcher's intention to conduct an investigation to find out why so many teens are uninterested in church and to propose realistic measures to redirect their attention to church. So here you're seeing a clear picture as to why this individual wants to conduct the research. She has looked at the fact that through observation, Saturday and Sundays, they go nowhere, they stay at home. And on top of that, they have voiced that they are uninterested when asked why not going to church. This is something that CSEC is looking for. You need to state clearly your reason why you want to conduct the research. Having done that, you will be awarded your full 2 marks. Now, after the reason for selecting the area, you're now well on your way to use or to select your method of investigation. So how am I going to collect the information to find out really or to explore the issues? you can state one method. Sometimes my recommendation to students is, as students oftentimes have a challenge in using interview and observation checklists, I oftentimes tell them, stick to the questionnaire. You can't go wrong when you stick to the questionnaire. However, if they want to go ahead and explore that option, fine. In this case, I am sharing with you a questionnaire that can be used. For interviews though, sometimes they do not cite properly in their discussion. So I tend to tell them, listen, though I will teach you how to do this, but stick to the questionnaire. It's easier and you will not be confused to complete and to get a good grade. CSEC has no problem in just having the questionnaire. So if your student, if I have teachers here, if your students are weak students, and I always get the weaker ones to work with, which I really don't mind, I tend to say, listen, do not confuse yourself, stick to this one. And we will proceed in completing a study. So an example here of the questionnaire, the method of investigation, you state the method in a sentence. So this is just basically a paragraph, it's 2 marks. It's a paragraph, and then you have to be mindful also that it's 1,000 to 1,200 words. So you don't want to make it too wordy and then you exceed the limit, because you will be sanctioned for it. So you must justify or provide advantages or reasons why is it that you have selected this. So let me share with you one more time the example that I have here. Method of data collection. Keep it simple and to the point. The researcher chose questionnaire as a method of data collection to garner the information needed to complete the research. Always ensure that you have your sources. So your in-text, Saul McLeod 2018, and they give a definition for that questionnaire. And then you provide by telling why you actually chose to use questionnaire. Make it short. Some persons tend to give like a page and a half. Remember, word limit is paramount. So you have to maintain your word limit. Simply state in one sentence the method of data collection, then you define the method, after which you justify or state why you have decided to use this method. So you're basically sharing the advantages of using it. And that's about it. You don't need anything else. You get the full 2 marks for this.
Saying they're very confused right now, and I attended a CSEC workshop about 2 years ago, and we were instructed to use only one variable. What are we to do really?
Remember, you can use one. Remember I said you can use one variable. However, one variable in the sense of effect. All right? I always advise persons to use the variable of effect. When you use a variable in that sense, it's easier to generate a cause, because with the effect, with a cause comes an effect. So when you're establishing your research question or generating your questionnaire, you will be able to generate questions in that regard. So you can use one variable, however, it's how you construct that variable that will determine whether or not you get 2 from it to help you with the questionnaire. Because that is really the problem. So gone are the days when some person said, oh, I can use one variable. And then when they're establishing their questionnaire, they can't complete because they are limited, if you understand what I'm saying. So you can construct it as in, how does the absence of the father affect the academic performance of the students of the 5th form or students of 5th form at the Alpha Academy? The effect there, how does it affect? Suggest effect. So when you're establishing your questionnaire, you can always roll back on causes, because had there not been causes, you would never have effects. So I don't know if that answers your question. So don't be confused. Probably what CSEC is saying is that the one variable is sufficient. But as I'm saying to you, ensure that you construct it in such a way that you do not run into problems when you're constructing your questionnaire or interview questions or checklists, if that is the case.
Do you have to have 3 advantages? I believe this is for the method that you were talking when you were reaching method.
Right, you don't have to have 3. As I said, keep it short. You can have 2. Now remember, on your computer, if you're typing or your tablet, you will see the word max at the bottom of the screen. So just bear that in mind. If it is that you exceed 1,002, I think the grace word count is 200. So if you go beyond that, you are going to be penalized. And worse, now than ever, all the SBAs are going in. You don't want to stand the chance of losing marks. You want to plug the one. If it is that you have a word limit that probably 20 words, just go over the project and check where you have, I'm not saying irrelevant, but too wordy. And you use synonyms to concise, and you should be all right.
If you have more information, if you can put it in the appendices, or if the appendices counts as counts in your word count.
No, as I stated before, let me go back. All the elements of the SBA that are not included in the word count are the cover page, acknowledgements, table of contents, bibliography, and appendices. So those are excluded from the word count. So this is what I tell my students and how they can use this to help them to keep abreast of the word count or the word limit, the cover page, acknowledgement, statement of the table of contents, bibliography, and appendices. Do not put that in your full discussion or your project itself. Create another file name for it so that you can keep abreast of the number. I always tell my students that. And so once they see the number climbing above, then they know that they have to either cut down on the word limit or use synonyms for X for, very wordy sentences. So you could do that. All right, that's just a recommendation or suggestion for you. Use a different file name, put a different file, all right? The statement of the problem, method, reason, method, and so on. And then for the cover page, acknowledgement, table of comment, bibliography, and appendices, put it in another file so that you can keep abreast of your word limit. All right, I hope that answers the question. Now we're down to the instrument, the part that gets everybody worked up and their head hurts and the whole works. Now, it's a simple instrument that you can generate. This is what I say to my student, and I'm going to share it with you. Here again, the cause, the 2 variables matter as it relates to the instrument. So for the first 4 questions can be your personal data or personal questions. We're looking at gender, we're looking at age group, we're looking at place of residence, we're looking at the family type, if that's a need. So for the first, then you look at questions relating to causes. So you'll find 2 or 3 questions or even 4, depending, relating to the cause. And then you can look at effects, 4 or so. So right there and then we have how many? 3 times 4, 12 questions already. And your solution questions, because I'm sure that you want to provide or propose solutions to reduce, mitigate, alleviate, curtail, address the issue. So you could have 2 or 3 questions that surround your solutions. And that should bring you up to 15 questions or even 16 the most. Many persons say 20, you don't really need to go up to 20, seeing that CXC limits us. So 15 is good. 16 is good, but do not exceed. And if you don't have to go to 16, you don't need to go to 16. So you help yourself right there to limit your word.
Someone's asking you to repeat the information that you just provided.
All right. So for the instrument, remember there is a limit of 1,000 to 1,200. You don't want your instrument to be extremely long or the questions to be too many so that it exceeds that or get you into trouble. So your instrument, you could break it down in personal data, or you can use personal information like age group, the gender, the place of residence, occupation, family type, and so on. So it depends on the topic that you're using. You can't have everything all the time. Because if you're doing teenage pregnant, you wouldn't want gender because all girls get pregnant. All right. So it depends on what, on the topic that you're using. So for personal questions, then based on the cause, you could look at 4 causes. All right. Effects the same. And then when you're looking at solution, you can either look at 2. Now remember, the individual is a must, the community is a must, and the government is a must. So you could generate questions surrounding those.
State the minimum questions for the instrument.
So you could do a maximum of 15 questions and leave it at that.
Miss, my teacher told me the minimum is 17, so I'm asking if that's okay.
All right. As I said, gone are the days when persons go all the way up to 20 questions. Not a problem. However, we have to bear in mind that CXC has limited us to 1,000, and a well-written study is not 1,000 or even 1,200 words. So my understanding is that they want us to just give them something in short, something concise, to the point. So this is what I tell persons: stick to 15 questions. If you have 4 personal, 4 causes, or 3, and so on, up to 15, that is okay. Remember, if you have 17 questions, all of those words, is counted, is counted. So all of those would add up, unless you don't want to have a nice discussion. And I always tell students, be concise and leave space for your discussion, which value is worth 8 marks. All right. So your teacher said 17, be smart. Listen to what your teacher says. However, if your word exceeds, then I think your teacher, you can share with your teacher. All right. It's not a must that you have 17 questions or 18 or 20, not even 16. 15 is good enough.
Been marking SBA for the past probably 16 years.
Yes.
What Mrs. is saying is correct. 15 questions. We even accept up to 12 questions as the minimum, 15 questions as the maximum. What we don't count as questions is the biodata. So your biodata should be separate from your question, the actual research question. So where you would put sex, religion, occupation, depending on what your study is, we do not check those as part of the research question. So you label that the biodata, and then you have 15 questions based on your statement of the problem.
All right, my question to you is, as you said, as it relates to religion, you do not count that. What if there is a question that surrounds religion and you have to discuss that? Wouldn't that be pertinent? Wouldn't that be important?
That's what I'm saying. If your research is based on religion, or if your research is based on gender, then you could include that as part of your research question. But if it's not based on religion or gender, because sometimes you can do a research to compare boys and girls. So you're going to use gender within a question, within the research. But if it's not based on your research, then the biodata is not counted as part of your questionnaire.
All right, thank you so much. What I had said initially is that it depends on your study.
Social studies and geography kind of have similar topics. So can challenges faced by farmers be a social studies SBA topic?
All right, farming, no. As for resources, it's a sensitive situation. It depends on how you would establish that question as it relates to farming, because when we look at resources, we look at farming practices. So it depends on how you establish your question to generate your question.
Do you need to include an introduction in the SBA?
No, CXC does not require an introduction. Many persons include it and they create havoc for themselves. Remember again, and I cannot overemphasize, the word limit is critical, and many people lose marks here because they do not pay keen attention. So CXC does not require introduction. No need for an introduction. Leave that out. All right. So no introduction is allowed. So we're looking at this question or these questions. This person did not get a full score, as you know, I'm shifting up questions, a full score for a number of reasons. The topic here is turned away from church or uninterested, being uninterested in church. Pertinent questions. The family type is very important in this question. The age group is also very important. And the years of residence is also important because this will help you to get information from persons who are experienced, persons who have seen this going on. All right? Their religious affiliation is also important. Normally, I tell my students to reduce the yes and no or the yes or no questions. Some students, they will fill the whole page with yes or no, and then they experience difficulty when they are discussing. If it is that I ask, do you go to church? Yes or no? If I go to church, I am going to say yes, full stop. How does that help me to generate a discussion? So advise your students, if we have teachers and students, stay away from the yes or no. You can have at least 2, no more than 3 yes or no questions. This will help you to generate your discussion. Here are 15 questions. This question here is a solution question. And we have about 2 to 3, all right, causes and so on. So just please stay as concise and simple as you can. CXC tend to say, please don't play heroes with your instrument. You might just die because of it. All right, so please, you don't want to lose marks and you don't want to have to create any havoc for yourself.
Is there a specific way that you have to present the questions?
There are no specific ways. You can column, some persons column it, it's neater. It takes up less pages because printing is really expensive. So no, there are no specific way in structuring.
One thing that we look at in the questionnaire is how the students write the questionnaire. The questionnaire must be in chronological order. If the questionnaires are not in chronological order, we're going to
deduct marks.
If you're doing something, let's say one of the child probably looking at the effects of drugs on students' ability to perform well in school. And then you ask one of the questions the child asks is, how do you feel after smoking marijuana? And then they ask, the next question is, do you smoke marijuana? That is not sequence.
Sequence, correct. Right.
So the sequence in which the child put the questions, it must be in chronological order. We tend to take out -1 mark for questions that are not chronological. And one problem we have with the questionnaire where a lot of candidates or students tend to lose marks is that some of the time they only have one question based on the research question.
Exactly.
Ask a whole lot of questions, 15, sometimes 20 questions.
And
when
has nothing to do with the research.
nothing to do with a statement of your problem. So
Exactly.
if there are students and teachers, try to encourage the students to always look back at the research question or the statement of the problem. Some people put sub-questions, which you don't really have to do, but because I'd like to say that will take more word count. So you don't really have to do a statement of the problem and then put sub-questions below. All that will add up to your word count. You're not going to get extra marks for that. You're getting marks for the statement of the problem, which is 2 marks. When we marking, sometimes we don't even read the sub-questions because there's no marks for that. The research question is the most important, and the instrument used to collect data must reflect that, so that when you're doing the analysis of data, you have rich data that you could use in your analysis to answer your statement of the problem.
All right, thank you, Ms. Thalika. All right, so as was stated, the questions must reflect your topic all the time. So ensure that that is followed through.
And should we include the research questions in task 1?
On the same page, yes. All right, though it is not, but when you're doing a research, you want it to be presentable. All right, just be short, be concise on the same page, just below that. Please do not, I've seen this from time to time, where students label their heading as task 1, task 2. Don't do that. The headings are important. So stick to your headings. All right, now after you have generated your instrument, you're going to distribute or to conduct a form or process in which you collect your data. So there are different ways of collecting: convenient sampling, simple random sampling, and so on. Now, a lot of students do not understand convenience and simple. And some teachers themselves don't understand, and so students do anything and they give them the mark. Convenient, if it is that you're focusing on a particular topic such as teenage pregnancy or drug abuse and such the like, then you could use convenient sampling because that's a purpose. All right, you know exactly or who you're targeting. So is it that you want to go to these teenage students to find out from them how they feel after they have been thrown out of school or they drop out of school or whatever, however the topic you've geared towards? And for simple random sampling, now remember, if you look at a particular community, let's say, for example, there are 100 houses. You will have to write down those house numbers and you'll have to put them in a bag or somewhere and shake them and then withdraw. Now, if a particular house, let's say 99 was drawn from your bag and that person cannot be found, you cannot give it to anybody else. You have to give the questionnaire to persons, to all the number of houses that you have selected. And so some persons tend to do what they feel like doing, but a research needs to be conducted based on sampling techniques so that students can better understand and obtain maximum marks where necessary. So first and foremost, you state this instrument that you have used, which in this case is a questionnaire. Then you state the sample location, that is the specific community. For example, Raytown. So you state the sample location. Then you describe how the sample target, that's the small group of people, because you cannot reach everybody. So you're selecting a sample, and through selecting the sample, you use your sampling technique, simple random or convenient. Then you state how many questionnaires were distributed, or the length of interview, if it is that you use interview, and the duration of your observation. So you need to make note of that. Remember, again, to be concise. One question the most for each, and you should be okay. Now, you have to state how many questionnaires were returned, and you must give an account for all the questionnaires that you did not receive. Reason for this is that you will now know 24 you received, and so the 24 is what I am going to use. Some persons, they distributed 30 or so, and they are still using that. You cannot do that. So pay keen attention to this. Only 1 mark is given per presentation of data, per chart, all right? So please bear this in mind.
In light of COVID restrictions and students will have to use online surveys, what sampling techniques would be most effective?
They could use a simple random sampling technique. That would be the best technique. The simple, they know that they could research a community and see how many houses are so, and they could use simple random sampling to do that. So they could check up and then email to that house as it relates to the COVID restriction. So that would be to me, the best option, because it would be easy to get the information because everything is basically online. So you could check, and then for the selected ones, you email those, your questionnaire.
How would the collection of data be different because of COVID?
Persons do have to move around, I must say. And as we're speaking about community, so in this case, if you can stick to your community, you are well aware of what's happening in your community. So if it is that some persons do not have that, they're not so technologically savvy or technologically inclined, what they could do is follow protocols. Wear your mask, and you could drop off and then have those persons copy and or capture using their phone and send back to you if it is that you don't want to go collect. You could collect, and you keep all of those at a particular area where you look at and leave them there. So I think different situation, different technique. My tourism upper sixers and lower sixers, we have to go to a particular attraction site or accommodation or restaurant. We had suggested virtual. Some students are unable because of the technicalities with the internet and all of those. I accompany them. I'm not telling teachers to do that now. If you don't want to do that, I do my guard thing, and I go drop off at different locations after contacting and getting approval, and we try our best to work it from there. So I guess as teachers, you'll have to just be sensitive about the situation and try to do what works best for you. So we're looking at the presentation of data, and I am going to recommend that persons do not use line graph for some data. Line graphs are used for trends, dates, and so on. Persons tend to use line graph across the board. We need to be careful about that. CSEC stipulates that you must have 3 different types of graphs. 3 different types: bar graph and column chart, same family. So if you use 2 bar graph, you cannot use 2 column chart, or you cannot use 1 column chart. So if you want to use 1 bar graph and 1 column, fine. So the types that you could look at: bar graphs, you could look at pie charts, you could look at tables, pictographs. All right, different types, 3 different types, and you should be okay. Now also, seeing that we have to resort to a limit of 1,000 to 1,002, you have to label your graphs properly. You must label your Y and your X axes. That's a must. In brief, for this one in particular, you have a bar graph here. You don't necessarily have to have a heading here and a figure down here. While some persons want to separate, again, be mindful of the word limit. Some teachers will say, oh, it looks better but be mindful that the word limit, all right, is 1,000. Your graph must be accurate. If it is that you have collected 28 of 30 questionnaires, it should reflect here on your bar chart. It should reflect. So what you could do is to check to ensure that that is so. You check 6 plus 7, because we're halfway here, 7, 7 and 8, that's 15. 15 and 4, 29. So it would be incorrect here because you have said in your procedure of data collection that you collected 28. Now you understand that the amount collected or the number of questionnaires collected is very, very essential. CXC will look at these, will reflect at these to ensure that that is exactly what it is. So ensure that your addition is accurate. So your labeling is accurate, your addition is accurate, all right? And you label your bar, your pie, your pictograph as figures. You do not label your tables as figures. They are table all by themselves. So table 1, table 2. An example. So you must have the number of respondents shown here. You must have the percentage here. All right, so these are the respondents who have answered to that particular option. And again, it's labeled as table, not figure. So please bear that in mind. Where the pie chart is concerned, however, your pies must reflect the percentage. You cannot have a blank pie. You will not get a grade for that. You must have your percentage shown on your pie. So a simple heading, causes, and then figure 2, which is a second figure. So you don't have to have all the pies one place, all the bars. You can mix them up, all right? As long as there are 3 different types represented, you should be okay.
For the presentation of data miss, is everything that you have collected or the question that you have asked and a questionnaire should supposed to be represented?
Excellent question. Only 6 questions should be represented. Only 6 questions should be represented. Only 6. All right. CXC recommends 6. 6 charts, 6 questions. So you can choose your questions, and I always advise person, always ensure that you have a cause question, an effect question, and other questions that will influence your discussion when you get there. Because remember, you have to use your data, all right, as a backup for your discussion. So 6 questions, just 6 questions, all right, as there are 6 charts that are required.
When teachers are marking the presentation, they must not penalize the students for the same thing on the 3 graph. You're supposed to present 3 different graphs, 3 graphs. And if you look at the mark scheme, I'm not sure if Ms. here have the mark scheme.
Yes, I do.
Let me follow the mark scheme when marking the students on the presentation of data. A lot of teachers tend to mark the graph individually, and you're not supposed to do it like that. So for example, if you look at the table and the bar graph that Ms. have as an example, both of them have the wrong total number of responses, because I think the table had 30 and the bar graph had 29 or something like that, and Ms. said 28. You cannot penalize the student for wrong data in the 2 different graphs. 1 mark will minus for having the wrong number of responses. So 1 mark will be minus. A lot of the time when we mark in the presentation of data, teachers penalize the students for individual graphs. So like if the candidate didn't label the pie chart and they didn't label the bar graph, then you minus 1 mark for labeling. Then you minus 1 mark for having incorrect number of responses. So you cannot minus 1 mark for incorrect responses in the table and then go and minus 1 mark again for incorrect responses in the bar graph. That's it. That is like penalizing the child twice for the same error. So when we marking it, we penalize the candidate or the student for, we consider it 1 mark you would minus. So sometimes, most of the time, candidates tend to get more marks than the teacher give the students for the presentation of data, because they penalize the student for each graph that they put. And we only check three form of presentation: a pie, a table, and a bar. So you know, I noticed that some teachers, I don't know if the teachers tell the students to do that, but they put, if they have 12 questions, they put 12 different charts. All we need is 3: a table, a pie chart, a bar graph, or a pictograph. And try not to use the biodata, because the biodata is not going to answer your research question unless you're doing a comparison of gender. Other than that, it makes no sense to use a biodata, because like one of this person, I think, was doing something about church, and they put residence as part of their presentation. That could fall under the biodata. You don't put sex, you don't put residence. You could put religion, because they're looking at whether or not you go to church. Thank you.
Thank you for that point. Just ensure that the 3 types of charts are used. Ensure 3 types are used, all right?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
When we're using the pie charts to represent our data, are we supposed to have the proportions in a clockwise direction? Meaning that, are we supposed to have the largest number first going around?
Not necessarily. When you create it in Excel, Excel just puts it there. So not necessarily. So it's no clock or anti-clockwise.
Excuse me, Miss, so suppose you're using the topic unemployment. Some of the biodata will be needed, right, for the charts?
Right, like occupation would be very important. Employment, you said, right?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So the occupation would be very important.
Hi, good afternoon. Just confirming, you mentioned 6 questions, and we were told that is only 3 that the students are supposed to present their data on. Just clarifying that, please.
All right, 3 different types of charts. 3 different types of charts, but CSEC requires 6 representation. So 3 different types of charts: bar chart, pie chart, table, for example. All right, 3 different types, but there are 6 charts, 6 representation that should be there. And as Ms. Felica said, that you should not, I'm not sure if you're a teacher or a student, you sound more like a teacher, that students should not penalize twice. So based on the rubric that you're given, students should be marked as such. So for errors, as not labeling, is just 1 mark. So it's not an individual mark per se. Let's continue. So when you have completed your presentation of data, then you're sure to move into the discussion of your findings. Your finding is very, very important. So you're basically answering your questions, your research question, all right? And be sure to be as concise as possible. And again, you have to organize your ideas. Your ideas must flow. So whatever it is that you have discovered, or whatever findings you have discovered, you have to ensure that your discussion is thorough yet concise. Pay keen attention again to the word limit. So your sources, now remember when you're discussing, you're answering basically. So if it is that you have, what are the factors responsible for, or what is the main factor, you're answering that question based on your finding. Your charts are there, and as I said before, ensure that your chart is represented, all right? Your cause is represented on one of the charts. Always use the questions that can help you to generate a good discussion.
Someone asked if you no longer have to write an explanation paragraph under the charts or
No,
the figures.
no, you don't need to, no longer need to. Remember, word limit, 1,000 to 1,200. So if you notice, the charts are just one line of one summary line, one. Figure chart showing figure one, pie chart shows that. That's it. So you don't need any explanation. All right, as this will create additional information. And you can use that because if you look at the analysis here and interpretation, you're basically interpreting your charts. At the same time, you're discussing your findings or adding additional information to enhance or back up what you are seeing. So you really don't need to have it under each chart.
And does the table have to have a percentage column?
It's good to have a percentage column, as in sometimes when you're discussing, you want to use. It's not a must, but it's good to have. It's not a must, but it's good to have.
Another question, does each chart have to be on its own page?
No. Each chart, as I said, some persons have printing issues. You don't have to have on separate page. What you need to do though is not to make the charts too small, all right, so that the markers find it challenging to mark or to read. So to the most on one page. As long as it is readable, right? It can be read, fine. So 2 on 1, not a problem. Some persons want it to be in their own mind, not a problem.
Someone else asked, what if the response of the question is 35 and each table response are different, such as 24, 30, 17. Are we going to be marked down for that?
All right, remember what was said earlier, that based on the rubric, I'm trying to bring up a rubric here. Based on the rubric, the teacher should not mark that chart separately from all the other charts. So all the charts should be viewed. So you're looking at the labeling, for example. So all the charts, are they labeled properly? If not, a mark is deducted. Then the teacher could look at the accuracy of the chart for all the charts. If the accuracy, if they're incorrect or the addition is incorrect, then a mark is deducted. So that's how it is looked on. So not individual charts being marked and move on. It's all the charts at once based on the criteria established by CSEC.
Okay, should the recommendation question be one of those to be presented graphically?
Well, you are basically discussing your findings, which the findings are there on the chart. So why not? You discuss the charts, and then on top of that, you use that to help to back up what you're actually saying. So you use those charts as support in your discussion.
Thelica has her hand up.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Thelica, go ahead.
Again, if you know that the child is having problem in writing the analysis and interpretation of data, you could let them write under the chart, because when we mark in, if they write under the chart, we start to take that as part of the analysis of data, because this is the analysis and interpretation is the weakest part done in the SBA. Most of the time you'll never get a full 8. The most you might get is 6 or 7. So as much as you don't need to write under the graph, when we get a very poor analysis and interpretation of data, we tend to go back to the presentation of data. And if you remember, analysis start from the time you start to discuss what is taking place in the presentation. So if we get when we mark and if we get a very weak analysis and the student probably get 2 in the analysis, we could go back to the presentation, read what I put on the charts and in the analysis, and we could give them 2 marks for that, and the analysis will go up to 4 instead of the 2 that they'll get under the analysis. Because a lot of students sometimes don't even do the analysis, but they'll still get 2 marks based on what they write, if they write anything under the charts. And next thing when doing the analysis, some of the things that you need to tell the students that they need to do is inferences. They need to have ratios, percentages. They want to see that you're able to analyze the data. And that part of the analysis, when we mark in, we look for percentages, ratio, comparison. The comparison could be between questions. In the questionnaire, the comparison could be from your secondary data. So you could say that the student could say, I could concur with Bradford 2010, who said so, and my data, after doing my research, my data showed the same. So that is where you're doing some comparison. What students do not do in the analysis is that they don't give inferences, they do not do comparison. They just give explanation of the data. So they just say, chart 2 asked so, 20% said this, 5% said that. They must use terms like majority, minority, least, most. These are the things that we look for when we mark in the analysis and interpretation of data.
Right, thank you, Thilika. Just one drawback to that, I must say, is wouldn't that affect the limit, the word limit, when they have the explanation beneath the charts?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if the teacher realized that the child is having a lot of problems with the analysis and interpretation of data, you would know your students. And if you're trying your utmost best to get the child to do this analysis and interpretation of data and you realize that they cannot get it, because I work with very weak students as well at my school. I have some good ones, but I also have some very weak ones. And they have a lot of problem understanding how to write the analysis and interpretation of data. I make my students put the information under the chart because I know when we mark in, if the analysis is very weak, they could get marks from that. Now, if you have good students and you realize that they write an excellent analysis and interpretation of data, there's no need to put anything under the charts. So it's up to the student. If the student did an analysis and interpretation after you work with that student for a year, and when they bring the analysis and interpretation for you, it's 5 lines. There's no way the child could get 8 marks for that. But if the child have some explanation under the graph, we tend to give the child 2 marks for that, and maybe 1 for, we don't give 0 for any task unless the task is not there. Once the child writes something under the heading, they're going to get at least 1 mark. CSEC told us we cannot give 0 if the child attempted the task. So if the child did the analysis and it's just 4 lines, we'll give them 1. But if they have a little explanation under the charts, then we could give them 2 marks there and 1 mark, and they could get 3 marks, or they could get 1 mark each for the explanation that they give under the graph and 1 for the analysis 4. So it's all about knowing your students and knowing their potential. If you realize that your students understand the analysis and they could put inferences and they could, they could really give you rich data in the analysis, there's no need to put anything under the charts.
All right, thank you so much, Thilika, for that point. All right, I see a hand. Christian, go ahead.
Hi, good day. I heard you gave some examples of words to use in the analysis. Can you repeat some of those words, please?
Majority, minority. Use up the percentage as best as you can. Whereby, therefore, those are some transition words as well that should be used. Furthermore, also, please ensure that you use sources internet sources, textbooks, newspapers, articles, all right, to support your discussion. Yes, we know that you've conducted a research by using your instrument, which is your questionnaire. You have collected your findings and you presented them. Yes, we know that. But to make it even more credible is that you find articles, find other authors that have discussed similar situations and insert them in your study. Now, remember, as we said, plagiarism is illegal, and CSEC, believe it or not, they know when you plagiarize. So you cannot copy something and call it your own. So please ensure integrity is paramount in your analysis, in your discussion. When you use other people's work, ensure that you apply or you insert the sources. And remember, APA format is required. All right. So those are just some tips there for you to use with your analysis. Now, as it relates to the statement of the findings, so for the statement of the findings, ensure that you write 3. CSEC requires 3 statements of findings, all right? When you write these, ensure that you insert the chart that you have represented. Put it in brackets. It saves CSEC the time and it will show how organized you are, how fluent you are, all right? So when you look at the statements of the finding, if it is that one of your discoveries is that half or majority, or let's say 70% of the respondents said that the main reason for the improper disposal of garbage is the lack of skips or garbage bins or whatever, all right? Then you state it as such. And if this, by the way, should be represented, as I said, use very pertinent information or questions that will help you to generate. And you can lift these out of your discussions, out of your analysis. You can just copy and paste to your statement. All right, so 3 statements of the finding. What have you discovered out of your study? So there are 3 things that CSEC is asking you to provide. All right, 3 discoveries. And you're basically answering your research question. That's why I always tell students, try to use a research question or use the research questions. It helps you along the way. All right, because you can just look at those, lift them from your analysis, and there you have it. So please remember, state your percentage. Yes, you can say majority if you want to use the word majority in your statement of the findings, but please put in brackets the exact percentage. Or seeing that we're focusing on the word limit, just use the percentage and leave it at that. Now, for teachers who are with us this evening, your statements, there are some students who they will put statements and it has nothing to do. They'll just generate something new, something fresh. It cannot be. It's from the discoveries, as it suggests, statement of the findings. So whatever students have discovered or found out, that's what should be used there. And whatever they put in the statement, it must match what's in the discussion or the analysis. So in analysis, they can't have 20%, while in the statement of the findings, they have 50%. So if they have 3 clear findings, they get the full 3 marks. If the 3 findings are not clear, they get 2 marks. All right, so that you'll have to look out for. And finally, recommendations and implementation of strategy. A lot of students tend to shy away from this. So they write down the 2 recommendations and that's it. But you'll have to tell, they'll have to explain how is it that these recommendations will work? How will they be successful? If you recommend education, how? What medium, what channel will you use to educate? And in using this medium or channel, how will it affect change? So that's what they're looking at. Now, 2 recommendations, and you're to implement one of the recommendations. Persons tend to do both. You're not going to get any marks for that. It's just 3 marks, 2 marks for the recommendations, and 1 mark for how you implement your strategy. So you need to bear that in mind. So 2 recommendations, and you can suggest from the solution that you have generated, as well as the implementation be as realistic as possible. Please do not go out of your way and create something that we know will never work. CSEC looks at how effective you are in your rational, in your decision making, in your judgments, and they will mark you based on that. Remember, again, all SBAs will be submitted. So you have to take that into account. So gone are the days when things could have been hidden, it can't anymore. All the SBAs have to be submitted. Quickly looking at just the overall exam structure. For paper 1, 60 marks. That's 30% of your exam grade. Paper 2, 100 marks, which is 50%. And as we had shared, 40 marks, which is 20% for the SBA. And the total, by the way, is 200 marks. A lot of marks, yes? So you have to work assiduously to plug the ones. Now, CSEC has changed the format of the paper 2. And I believe some persons are still using the old format. Hence, they are losing out on how to actually function in answering the questions as they should. So for paper 2 in this changed format of paper 2, there are only 2 sections now. Only 2 sections, sections A and B. In section A, there are 4 compulsory questions. You have to do these. These are mandatory. You have to, it's a must. If you don't complete them, then you lose marks. And for each question, it's 20 marks. For each question, it's 20 marks. So ensure that you bear that in mind and just ignore the old format and focus on the new format because persons are still using the old one. For section B, this is the options section where some teachers teach communication, some teach consumer affairs, some teach tourism. So for my school, it's a requirement to have a background of tourism to enter the tourism studies at 6th form. So I choose tourism for section B. Teachers can decide, all right, based on your coordinator or administration, all right, which option you will teach. Some students, they overlap, like geography, overlap. They learn tourism in geography. Some for IT or EDPM, they learn communication. Some business student, consumer affairs. So as a teacher, you should know what suits your students, right? And what is easier for them to handle. So if it is they're learning communication and most of them don't know tourism and consumer affairs, it's always good because sometimes the questions come really challenging and had they learned something else, they probably could have answered that question. So just a little example here on how to answer the question. CSEC requires that you answer your questions in complete sentences. And this is a challenge for a lot of students. They are looking at the time and they want to finish quickly. So they drop an answer, drop a point, and that's it. There they go. CSEC wants complete sentences. So how to use your time wisely? Let's calculate. 2 hours and 40 minutes is given as the duration. There are 5 questions. I presume that you will spend most of your time in section A as there are 4 questions. So if there are 5 questions to answer, you could give each question 25 minutes, leaving 5 minutes, all right? And so this you would use to probably brush up on some areas that you did not cover, or you could reread and edit. So you could use 25 minutes per question, and then you could use the remaining minutes to read over or to make adjustments if necessary. All right, so let us look at a question. All right, and in doing it in 25 minutes, it means that you'll have to know the content in its entirety, do frequent practices, speed tests, and so on. So as you see a question, your brain starts flowing. And again, remember, complete sentences are required. All right, so let us look at this sample question. Identify 2 family types other than the single parent family, which are found in the Caribbean. So this is easy, right? 2 family types. Oh yes, really easy. Again, 2 marks. Ensure that your answer is in complete sentences. So let's see how this is answered. 2 family types other than single parent family, which can be found in the Caribbean, are extended and nuclear family. Full 2 marks, to the point. Remember, you have to keep in mind time is moving really fast, so you have to know the information to drop it and move on. But remember, in a complete sentence. 2 family types other than single parent family, which can be found in the Caribbean, are extended family and nuclear family. We know you have other types, all right? Reorganized or reconstructed or blended or sibling household, all right? You could do that as well. But remember, in complete sentences. So that is part A. Part B, list 2 social issues faced by children in Caribbean families. Easy question. Quick, 2 social issues. Drug abuse, all right. But you can't just drop it there. Write in complete sentences. Response, issues which are faced by children in the Caribbean families include teenage pregnancy and substance abuse. We're working with time here, so we have to move quickly. Section C, outline 2 reasons why parents may need guidance dealing with teenagers. Response, parents may need guidance as never put 1, I did this deliberately, never do this. All right, remember you're writing in sentences, never do that. They may lack the relevant knowledge necessary to support and advise teenagers experiencing hormonal changes which affect their behavior. And the last, which is what I really want you to focus. So you can always get 8 marks, easy. But remember, that will not help you to pass that question because that's 8 out of 20. Let's look, for example, at the question that creates a lot of havoc why students don't get a 1. Question 1D. This is where the strategies come in, and this is how you will have to justify why. The same thing with the recommendation. So if teachers can actually help their students to get this point, then it will be easier for them to explain in the exam. A magistrate in the family court in your country has expressed concern over the number of teenagers appearing before the court, many of whom apparently lack parental guidance. Suggest to parents 3 ways in which they can develop skills necessary to provide adequate guidance for their children. Explain why each of the ways you have suggested is likely to work or likely to be successful. So we have to be mindful that you don't just drop the 3 points. If you drop the 3 points, you're getting only 3 marks out of the 6 marks. You have to explain, suggest, give additional information to be awarded the other 3 marks. So let us look at this response. Parents can develop skills necessary to deal with their children by 1, attending parents' group meetings to brainstorm for plausible suggestions. There you will get your full 2 marks. The other is seeking assistance from reputable and knowledgeable persons, such as psychologists. That's another 2 marks. and reading and implementing strategies suggested in literature on parenting. There you will have your full 6 marks. But if you just jot it down, attending parent group, that's it. Or psychologist or reading, you're not going to get your full marks. You're going to get 1 mark. Now, how to justify or to show how this will be successful. Let's say, for example, we use the second, psychologist training. The psychologist training and their experience gained from counseling persons on a wide variety of social issues equip them to pass on advice to parents and develop their parenting skills. So this is how that information from the psychologist to the parent would work. All right, so you would get your full 2 marks here. All right, and then you apply the same feature or the same action to the others. So bear in mind, you must justify. This is where most students fall down. Sometimes it's only 8 out of 20 or 4 out of 20. And then they leave this part blank because they're unsure how to justify. You're basically telling how this will work, how it will be successful, how you teaching me, how you advising me will work. All right, and I think that brings us to the end. So I hope you have learned something today and that you will go and practice. All right, much content is needed. You have to study, you have to read, keep abreast, watch the news, read the newspaper, be current in your observation. All right, always research, listen to your teacher, pay attention, and you should capture pertinent details to write well. All right, all the very best in your endeavors, and I hope you have learned something from this workshop in helping you to plug the ones. All the best. Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much, Mrs. Aldine Henry McNuff, the expert who has led us closer to the ones that we and our children will be having. Could you all open your mics or use your icons to applaud Mrs. Henry McNuff for a wonderful presentation? Make a little noise. The persons who came in to participate in the workshop today, including the way in which you made it a real workshop. You shared your own best practices. Want to thank the teacher who has been marking CXC, who was not selfish at all with her expertise and knowledge. And we really want to encourage you all as you continue to prepare the students and you students who are here, prepare yourselves for excellence. We are Caribbean people and we have standards of excellence. I'd also want to, in a very special way, thank our director, Dr. Sonia Stanley Nair, our team that has coordinated the workshop, Mrs. Bettine Ross Laws, Miss Kadian Williams, and our wonderful, fabulous technical manager today, Ms. Isabel Dennis, who many of you would be happy to hear is from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, everyone. Remember, if you're interested in studying in cultural studies, I'm not just talking to students, I'm talking to teachers too. Whether postgraduate work or your undergraduate work in cultural studies, in entertainment and events, managed in cultural and creative industries, and in music and performance studies. Yes, we offer a degree in music now at the Mona campus in our department, music and performance studies. You are welcome to the ICS at the UWI if you want to interrogate more of the issues that you teach students in terms of culture from wherever you are. There is an MA, M.Phil, Ph.D. program in the postgraduate section of our department. All the best, every blessing. Have